Does Congress create agencies or the President? Congress creates federal agencies through legislation. When Congress passes a law that establishes an agency, it defines the agency's purpose, structure, and powers. The President then oversees the agency's implementation and appoints its leadership, often with Senate approval. For example, Congress created the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, in 1970 through legislation, and the President, Richard Nixon at the time, implemented it by executive order. So, while Congress has the power to create agencies, the President plays a key role in their administration and leadership. Can the President create an agency by executive order? The President cannot unilaterally create an agency with regulatory or enforcement powers through executive order. Only Congress has the constitutional authority to establish federal agencies by passing legislation. However, the President can 1. Reorganize existing agencies. The President can issue an executive order to shift responsibilities between agencies or create new offices within existing agencies, but major changes usually require congressional approval. 2. Create advisory bodies or task forces. The President can establish committees, councils, or offices to advise or assist with policy, e.g. the Office of Homeland Security before Congress later created the Department of Homeland Security. 3. Direct an agency to take action. The President can order an agency to focus on certain priorities, but the agency must act within the powers granted to it by Congress. Example: 1. The Peace Corps was created by executive order in 1961 by President Kennedy, but it was later formally established by Congress. 2. The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, was proposed by Nixon and created via Reorganization Plan No. 3 of 1970, which Congress approved. In short, while the President can propose, restructure, or influence agencies, truly new agencies with regulatory powers require congressional approval. What could happen if a President did unilaterally create an agency without Congress? If a President unilaterally created a federal agency with regulatory or enforcement powers without congressional approval, several things could happen. 1. Legal challenges, lawsuits, and court rulings. 1. Congress or private parties could sue the administration, arguing that the President exceeded executive authority. 2. The courts, especially the Supreme Court, would likely strike down the agency as unconstitutional, since only Congress has the power to create new agencies with binding authority. 3. Example: the Supreme Court has previously ruled against executive overreach, such as in Youngstown Sheet and Tube Company v. Sawyer, 1952, where the court blocked President Truman's attempt to seize steel mills without congressional authorization. 2. Congressional pushback. 1. Congress could pass legislation explicitly defunding or abolishing the unauthorized agency. 2. Lawmakers might also refuse to confirm presidential appointments or use investigations, e.g. through oversight committees, to pressure the administration. 3. Budget and funding issues. 1. Federal agencies require funding from Congress to operate. 1. If Congress refuses to allocate money, the agency would lack resources to function. 2. Even if the agency were created, it might be unable to enforce its policies without congressional support. 4. Political consequences. 1. Such an action could spark public controversy, with accusations of an imperial presidency. 2. It could lead to impeachment proceedings if Congress views it as a serious abuse of power. 3. Future presidents could undo the agency through their own executive actions, making it unstable. Bottom line: while the President has broad executive authority, creating a new independent agency without Congress would almost certainly be unconstitutional and face severe political, legal, and financial obstacles. Does the federal courts have the authority to prevent the President from carrying out executive orders? Yes, federal courts have the authority to block or overturn executive orders if they are deemed unconstitutional or exceed presidential authority. This is part of the system of checks and balances under the U.S. Constitution. How can federal courts block an executive order? 1. Injunctions and temporary restraining orders. Courts can immediately halt an executive order if a lawsuit is filed and a judge believes there is a likelihood of success in challenging it. Example: in 2017, federal courts blocked parts of President Trump's travel ban before the Supreme Court later upheld a revised version. 2. Judicial review, declaring an executive order unconstitutional. If an executive order violates the Constitution or contradicts an existing law, courts can strike it down. Gis example: Youngstown Sheet and Tube Company v. Sawyer, 1952. The Supreme Court overturned President Truman's executive order to seize steel mills during the Korean War, ruling he had overstepped his authority. 3. Interpreting limits of executive power. Courts can rule that an executive order exceeds the President's power under the Constitution or existing laws. Example: State of Washington vs. Trump, 2017. A federal court blocked Trump's executive order restricting immigration from certain countries, ruling it lacked legal justification. Limits on court authority. 1. Courts cannot preemptively block an executive order before it is issued. 2. The Supreme Court has the final say, but cases can take years to reach that level. 3. If an order is based on national security or foreign affairs, courts may be more deferential to the president. Bottom line, yes. Federal courts can block, limit, or overturn executive orders if they violate the Constitution, existing laws, or individual rights. However, enforcement ultimately depends on compliance by the executive branch and possible appeals to the Supreme Court.